Hey, you want to see a movie?
Nah, we're Japanese. Let's go watch a schoolgirl bang an octopus.
Yeah!
おいで抱きしめてあげるよサクセンが feel good 見ないだ
我が敵は天地入れざる超敵ぞ敵の対象たる者は孤高無双の英雄
The Sengoku Jidai, or Japanese warlord era, ended with the unification of Japan under the Tokugawa shogunate under Tokugawa Ieyasu. The shogunate was a hereditary military dictatorship that ruled Japan, while the emperor acted as a ceremonial figure. From the 1600s to the 1800s, during the Edo period, Japan followed a policy of isolation called Sakoku. This was due to the fear of outside influence, especially from Iberia, that could lead to instability within the shogunate. There were some exceptions, such as the Dutch, Chinese, Ainu, and Koreans. The Europeans wanted to open up trade with Japan in order to expand their markets in Eastern Asia. The US decided to use gunboat diplomacy against Japan. Gunboat diplomacy is when military force, especially naval force as the name suggests, is used to threaten a nation into cooperation. Commodore Matthew Perry led expeditions from 1853 to 1854 in Japan to open them up for trade. The US Navy was sent to Edo, which is the capital that would become Tokyo, and threatened the Japanese to open up commerce or there would be war. The Japanese complied, and their ports were forcefully opened up to Europeans, which would begin the Bakumatsu years of the Edo period, in which the shogunate was open to foreign influence with the Convention of Kanagawa. This led to increased unpopularity of the shogunate and hostilities towards foreigners, as they feared that Japan would end up falling like the Qing dynasty. This movement was called the Sono-Joi movement. The goal was to restore the emperor and expel foreigners from Japan. This would result in internal instability and conflict, for example, the murder of European missionaries or the failed coup attempt during the Kinmon incident. Saigo Takamori, a samurai, as well as Okubo Toshimichi and Katsura Kogoro, two statesmen and military leaders, would form the Sacho Alliance in 1866 with the goal of overthrowing the shogunate and restoring imperial rule. Combined with the imperial court of Japan, they seized power from the shogun in the Boshin War. Loyal Han, or domains, fought against the combined forces, but were eventually pushed north to Hokkaido, where they were defeated in the Battle of Hakodate. This would lead to the restoration of the rule of the 16-year-old Meiji Emperor, bringing an end to the Tokugawa shogunate and the Edo era, and the start of the Meiji era. Many reforms were passed during this era, such as the abolition of the Han system, which was done to centralize the newly formed Japanese empire and bring an end to feudalism, as well as the establishment of a Western-modeled military. Infrastructure was expanded, public education was made, and industrialization began in Japan. This ushered in a new era of progress and economic, technological growth. Additionally, Western culture entered Japan, influencing fashion and music. The feudal system was replaced with the Hanbatsu, an oligarchic clique of leaders who led reforms during the Meiji era. In fact, most power in Japan was held by oligarchic leaders and the elite. Many samurai were unsatisfied with the direction the nation was taking, as they began losing their status and privilege in Japanese society. This led to several revolts and insurrections, most famously the Satsuma Rebellion, in which Saigo Takamori, who led the restoration earlier, waged war against the empire. The samurai were quickly defeated, allowing the Japanese Empire to flourish. During the Meiji era, the Japanese Empire saw military victories in the First Sino-Japanese War, in which the Qing were humiliated and ceded Taiwan and Liaodong to Japan, as well as Korea falling under Japanese influence. In 1904, the Japanese Empire also launched a preemptive attack on Russia, later defeating the Russian Empire and capturing southern Sakhalin, which would become the Karafuto Prefecture. European nations made sure to restrict Japanese gains after the war, and would do the same during the Taisho era, when Japan defeated the Germans in World War I. This would lead to resentment of Western nations, who were seen as interfering with Japan's rightful expansionism, and this anger would be let out in full force during the Second World War.
人さえ国を追う召したるたに